Hello everyone, Stormy1 here. Today we'll be talking about what's going to be a hyperactive pattern for the next 7 days. We got multiple severe weather chances and also the increased potential for flooding issues later next week. There's a lot to unpack from this video, so I'm going to try my best to kind of get through everything as we kind of go on. But we're going to get started with the Storm Prediction Center outlook for tomorrow. We do have a big enhanced risk that is still out there. That includes a large chunk of the Ohio Valley and the mid to lower Mississippi River Valley. And if we get a closer look on that risk area, really not much has changed on the enhanced risk. And I still agree with the placement of the enhanced risk for tomorrow. And the enhanced risk does include basically the entire Bluegrass region, up into Cincinnati, Louisville, down in Bowling Green, parts of South Central Kentucky is included, and all of Western Kentucky. And the risk goes down the farther east that you go. And now, since we're in the day 2 outlook, they issued these tornado, wind, and hail products now. So here's a look at the tornado outlook for tomorrow. And you can see here pretty low tornado risk for eastern Kentucky, but the farther west you go, higher the risk. And you can see areas generally along the west of the I-65 corridor currently has the greatest chance of seeing tornadoes. That's a 10% area in that yellow area. But you also see that hatched area. That's an indication for the potential for strong tornadoes. That is tornadoes greater than EF2. So there is potential for a couple of strong tornadoes out there. There's a 5% across a decent chunk of central Kentucky. Kind of stretches from like Albany, Monticello, all the way up through Lexington, up into Covington, Cincinnati area, in a 5% chance. One of the main hazards is going to be damage and winds, and areas of enhanced risk are also in a 30% damage wind risk. You also see the hatched area once again. That's the potential for wind gusts greater than 75 miles an hour. So that's potential for destructive winds out there that can really do a lot of damage out there. And that includes a large chunk of Kentucky as well. And then if we go to the hail risk, you can see here, once again, a 30% chance for large hail. And once again, hatched area. That's the potential for 2 inches in diameter or larger hail. So that's hail that could be bigger than hen eggs. And I think the potential is there for baseball-sized hail for western Kentucky. And I think arguably western Kentucky has the greatest chance of seeing some big hail out there. Hail risk goes down the farther east you go. And then we go to the day 3 outlook. You can see we got this big slight risk that's out there that stretches from New York through the entire Mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas, down into the Gulf Coast of Florida, down into Louisiana. And that slight risk does go across southeastern Kentucky, and we're likely going to see a continuing squall line move through southeastern Kentucky Monday morning. The main hazard would be damage and winds. Kind of roll out a quick spin-up tornado or two out there. And if we go to day 4, which is Tuesday, got a slight risk for severe weather for parts of Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa. And yeah, we're not done. If we go to day 5, which is Wednesday, we got this big slight risk that extends from portions of Great Lakes all the way down into the Dallas and Fort Worth area. And then on today's update, they've introduced a 30% enhanced risk, which does include parts of Kentucky. And here's a closer view here. You can see that enhanced risk includes Lexington, points north and southwest. So that would also include Bowling Green, Frankfort, Louisville, all of western Kentucky, and then again all the way up into Cincinnati. And that slight risk includes all of southeastern Kentucky except for a few counties out there. So, and obviously after Sunday, we really got to pay close attention to Wednesday. And honestly, Wednesday is, I got some concerns for Wednesday. Just to be honest with you guys, I got bigger concerns for Wednesday than I do for Sunday. And I think Wednesday's got higher potential. And also, I think this is Lexington's first ever Day 5 enhanced risk. I've seen Day 5 enhanced risk before for areas along and west of I-65, but I've never seen a Day 5 enhanced risk for areas as far east as the I-75 corridor. And I think they've been doing these 4 to 8 day outlooks for a little over 10 years. So, yeah, definitely not something we see very often here, a Day 5 enhanced risk that's out there. And I think that's the right category. And like I said earlier, Wednesday's got much higher potential, or I wouldn't say much higher, but higher potential for significant severe weather than Sunday. And we'll talk more about Wednesday a little bit later in the video, but I want to get into Sunday first because that's what's going to come up first before Wednesday. So the HRRR model, this is one of the best high resolution models in the short range. So it's finally in range. So throughout most of the day for Kentucky, we'll be dealing with these hit or miss showers out there. And then really by Sunday morning here, we may get a couple of storms that may fire up on the backside of some of these showers here, maybe across parts of western and central Kentucky. And at the same time here, you're going to notice here, this is going to be another thing to watch. We got a cluster of thunderstorms that rose from Kansas, Oklahoma into Missouri. We got to watch that because while it would be correct that the cluster of thunderstorms will miss Kentucky, you can see here how it moves more to the northeast. It moves up into like the St. Louis area and eventually up to Illinois. Last severe weather season, the modeling was horrible on morning convection around here. Horrible. So I would take that as a bit of a grain of salt. What the models really miss out on with morning convection is they really killed the storms too early and they under convect during the morning hours. And that's going to be something to really watch for. Now, unlike some of the severe weather setups, from last year, we're going to have a stronger element mix layer in here. And there's also that risk for a cap inversion as we go into Sunday afternoon. If you don't know what a cap inversion is, it's basically an area of warm air in the atmosphere. And when thunderstorms try to, go up in the atmosphere, when they hit that cap inversion, it's like a brick wall. They just can't get through it. So it keeps a lid on things, but eventually that cap's going to break later today. And we also got to watch how strong that cap's going to be, because if it's a weaker cap, then we may see a little more development out here, which is something that the HRRR model is suggesting. The HRRR doesn't really show much of a cap out here, so we do see some disorganized showers out there. And can I allow a strong storm out there if that ends up being the case out there? But if we end up seeing a stronger cap here, then we'll get more dry time Sunday afternoon, which is not necessarily a good thing because you make the atmosphere more unstable. Now, we will see quite a bit of cloud cover throughout the day, but with that elevated mix layer coming overhead, the atmosphere is becoming more unstable in the upper parts of the atmosphere. Plus, we'll have a stronger southerly wind for Sunday, so that's going to help keep our temperatures milder. So despite the amount of cloud cover we'll have tomorrow, our atmosphere is still going to be unstable for this next round of storms, which as we do get into Sunday afternoon, you see these thunderstorms initiate off to our west. We'll probably have more storm coverage up in Illinois into Indiana, probably from the remain outflow boundary from the morning round of storms like we talked about earlier, the same storms that will be in Kansas and Oklahoma later this evening. It's going to be all the way up in Michigan probably by that right around this time. And then we look down towards, southern Missouri into northern Arkansas. Now we got supercells initiating down there. And these are the ones we really got to watch for Sunday afternoon, because these supercells will have the capability of producing damaging winds, very large hail, and some tornadoes will be possible. Now, I think early on when these supercells initiate, the tornado risk is not going to be that high, because low over shear is not looking to be very strong in the late afternoon into the early evening. However, that changes as you progress through the evening hours as low over shear begins to increase. And we'll talk a little more about the low over shear here in a couple minutes. But you see those supercells moving across southeastern Missouri, southern Illinois, into western Kentucky, even going into southwestern Indiana. And I think the main hazard with these supercells is going to be very large hail. The atmosphere is very favorable for some potentially destructive hail out there. Hail that could be up the size of baseballs in some of those storms. So that will be a threat we really got to watch for too, because hail that big could really do quite a bit of damage out there. And as we get deeper into Sunday evening, we'll start to notice here that as we get more supercells out there, they're going to start congealing into a line of storms. And that will help decrease the large hail risk, but the damage and wind risk starts to go up at the same time. With an environment like this, the environment will be pretty favorable for a squall line of thunderstorms that can produce numerous to potentially widespread damage and winds, and even some destructive winds as well. If we do get Boeing segments within this line of storms, there is that potential for 70, 80 mile per hour winds, which you'll be able to see right here as we get into Sunday night. You got a Boeing segment right here, and it looks like a couple of other Boeing segments back towards western Kentucky. Now, this is just a simulation for any HRML, so it's not going to be exactly right, but it kind of gives you an idea of what it could look like, going forward into Sunday here. And it does show that potential for those Boeing segments within the line, and that's where we may have to really keep an eye on those potential 70 to maybe upwards of 80 mile per hour winds when you get Boeing segments like this. And even with a line like this, there could still be some hail, maybe some large hail mixed in with some of these storms as well out there. And of course, the tornado risk does exist. At this point here, the low shear is probably at its strongest through the event, and it's not going to be that strong. It is strong enough to support some tornadoes. And if we do get amenable supercells along this squall line here, then there's that opportunity for a strong tornado out there. But I think the greatest strong tornado risk would probably be back towards, I probably want to say in this area in here. I think that's where the timing's going to be just right, in this area in here in red. I think far western Kentucky, I think the strong tornado threat's a little more conditional. I think that's just going to depend on how strong the low shear is going to be. And I think there will still be tornadoes out there regardless here. But the strong tornado side is a little bit more uncertain. So as we go into the wee hours of Monday morning, which should still continue to see a line of strong severe storms move across southeastern Kentucky. And obviously these storms here will be much weaker by the time it gets there, as instability is not going to be as impressive out there. So let's get a little bit more in detail with this here. So let's look at the 5-hour millibar winds. So you can see here as we get into Sunday afternoon here, there's quite a bit of wind energy out there. And that's something we've been talking about with this up here, is that there's going to be quite a bit of upper level wind energy. It's not the most impressive wind energy we've ever seen, but it will be strong enough to support some strong severe storms out there, and even some significant severe too. And you can actually kind of see here, you see these little pockets here where there's not as much wind out there. Those are actually thunderstorms. The thunderstorms are going to build so tall that they're actually going to build through the 500 millibar wind. So these are going to be some pretty tall thunderstorms out there. And these thunderstorms will be able to tap into some of this wind energy we got out here. We got a jet streak that runs from Illinois through Indiana. That's going to lead to quite a bit of lift for areas up towards Indiana and Ohio. Probably going to be a pretty good squall line up there. But down here in Kentucky here, it's probably going to be more of a discrete mode early on. But as you get deeper to the evening here, it's going to turn more into a squall line here. And you can see here that we're going to have plenty of wind energy for these storms here throughout most of the event here, at least based off of the 500 millibar winds. If we check out the low jet winds, now this is where it gets a little more complicated for the tornado potential. Like I was talking about earlier about the low shear potential, you're going to see here that when we have thunderstorms first initiate in this area in here, in far western Kentucky, southwestern Indiana, southern Illinois, southeastern Missouri, there's not a lot of, wind energy out there in the lower levels, which makes it a little more uncertain on the tornado potential earlier on. Now, this is a very favorable environment for very large hail. Anytime you get weaker level shear in the lower levels to stronger shear, up around 500 millbar winds, that's very conducive for hailstorms. So conditions will be very favorable for large hail and even significant hail out there with those supercells. But as we get deeper into Sunday evening into Sunday night, you start to notice that the winds begin to pick up. Now the environment's becoming a little more favorable for some tornadoes, especially if we still got supercells out there. And this is where I think the strong tornado risk is really going to come in. I think the greatest strong tornado risk is probably going to come in probably Sunday evening out there if we still have supercells out there at the time. If we still got supercells out there, there's definitely that opportunity for a couple of strong tornadoes. But either way, the tornado threat is still going to be pretty elevated out there. And you can see how the wind energy does continue into Monday morning out there. And let's talk about thermodynamics. We're going to look at some forecast soundings as well, because forecast soundings kind of tell you the full story of everything. So you can see here, areas in blue here, that's at least 1,000 joules per kilogram. That's ideal for severe weather. Areas in the yellow-orange colors, that's at least 2,000 joules per kilogram. That's more than enough for severe weather. And you can even see some areas in red in Arkansas and southeastern Missouri. Those are instability values higher than 3,000. That's more than enough. So there's going to be plenty of instability here. There's definitely not going to be a lack of instability for western Kentucky. Now you can start to see those thunderstorms eating up that storm fuel out there. And you can see out ahead of those storms, so you can see how unstable the environment is. And if I do get a sounding in western Kentucky, so there's a couple of important things here. So number one is that we got a lot of instability, like we were saying earlier. Nice mixed layer cape in the upper levels of the atmosphere. What's also important here is that we see drier air from the tops of the thunderstorms, especially between 700 and 500 millibars, all the way down towards 850. So we got a pretty decent elevated mixed layer out there. And normally with an elevated mixed layer, it helps keep the atmosphere pretty unstable. The atmosphere is a little bit cleaner, kind of keeps away from the disorganized convection. Not as much cloud covers out there. And it can also help increase the hail risk as well. And another way to look at elevated mixed layer is mid-level lap rates. And you can see them right here in the bottom left corner. Any number that's above a 7 is a pretty good elevated mixed layer, and we do have that. So that's why I've been saying that this environment is very conducive for very large hail, because really most of the ingredients for significant hail is there in western Kentucky. So, and even the analogs out here support that idea as well, which normally I don't pay too much attention to analogs, but the analogs support the idea of some significant hail within some of these supercells. If we look at our hodograph up here, you can see here we got a little bit of a curvature with the hodograph, so that would support some supercell structures out there. And here's one thing I was talking about here, low level shear. If we look at the wind shear in the lower levels, you can see it's not that impressive. From the surface to 1 kilometer is 140 in terms of storm relative helicity. That's not really impressive. It is just strong enough to support some tornadoes, but not necessarily strong tornadoes out there. But as we go deeper to the evening, you're going to see these numbers here increase out there. And if we also look at wind direction with height, you can see winds at the surface are kind of from the southwest, and then you should go up to 700 millibars that kind of come from the southwest. So you got wind change of direction with height. But there is something important that I need to mention here. There's something that's called veer back veer. What that is that the winds, kind of at the surface here, they're out of the southwest. And then as you go further up to the atmosphere, the winds kind of change in a different direction. So and then you go a little bit higher again, let's say up to like 500 millibars, it goes back to that same direction like it is in lower levels. So the mid-level rotation kind of spins in a bit of a different direction. That can lead to a failure mode in terms of tornado production. And that's why the confidence for the strong tornado risk is not really that high for this event. Because you get the veer back shear potential, but also the low level shear is not that impressive. So I'm not very confident with the strong tornado potential, but regardless of that, there's still going to be some tornadoes out there. And most of these tornadoes will probably be weak and brief. So I'm not too concerned about the tornado potential, but it's still dangerous though, especially at night out there. But this sounding here would definitely be favorable for very large hail and damaging winds as well. You can see downdraft Cape is north of 1,000. Yeah, that's going to be pretty supportive for damaging winds, and maybe even some significant wind as well could be possible. So as we get deeper into Sunday evening into Sunday night here, you see how the instability values start to go down as they normally do. But at this point here, low over shear is beginning to increase. If we get a sounding out towards central Kentucky, we can see here how the wind shear profiles are a little bit more favorable. You got a better looking hodograph. Wind change direction of height. There is that veer back veer shear, right around 700 millibars. It's not the best looking wind shear profile. You got, low level rotation looks pretty good, but mid level rotation doesn't look as good. That's what we were talking about earlier about the veer shear out there. And then we look at instability. Of course, surface-based Cape is exceeding 1,000 joules per kilogram, so that's more than favorable. We also got more elevated instability as well. That can keep the risk for some large hail out there. Not really significant hail. And you can also see here the lap rates are not as strong out here too. But however, with instability still exceeding 1,000 joules per kilogram, with a good amount of shear out there, I think it's still going to be supported for severe storms out there, even though the lap rates have backing off. 3 Capes also exceeding 100 as well, which could be good for quick spin-up tornadoes out there. So based off of the sounding, this would be favorable for large hail, damage, and winds, and for a couple quick spin-up tornadoes out there, which by this point here, this should be a squall line kind of coming through by that point as well. As we go into wee hours of Monday morning, there can still be some instability left over down across south central Kentucky. But as you wake up, Monday morning, there's not a lot of instability left for southeastern Kentucky. But them storms can still be strong or even locally severe, bringing a strong to damage wind risk. So putting all this together here, this is my thoughts for Sunday to Sunday night. And this may change. We still got about a day to go. So the primary hazards for this event is going to be damage, winds, and hail. You can see both of those are in the high category. Now, not everybody in the state is going to get these same type of threats, so I'm going to have to explain it a little bit more. So, I think the greatest risk for large hail, especially significant hail, is going to be western Kentucky, as I said earlier. Pretty good chance for damage winds, and I think for most areas, damage winds is going to be the primary hazard, especially for central and eastern Kentucky. And then, of course, you got that risk for several tornadoes. And I think the greatest tornado risk is going to be more confined in central and western Kentucky. And you can see here, if you want to be more specific on the threats, there could be some destructive winds up to 80 miles an hour. Baseball-sized hail could be possible, mainly in western Kentucky. We could probably still see hail up the size of quarters, maybe bigger than that, into central Kentucky. And in terms of tornado risk, several tornadoes will be possible. I can't rule out strong tornado out there. And then for the flooded potential, I think it's going to stay pretty low. I'm not really concerned about the flood risk for this event. But if we do get training of thunderstorms, there could be some local high water issues out there. And the ground is still decently dry. We can take a decent amount of rain out there. So then after Sunday here, that low pressure system moves off to the northeast. Monday's not a bad day. It is a cooler day overall, but it isn't too bad. As we get into Tuesday here, we begin to warm up again. And then if we look off to our west, here comes our next storm system. And this is going to be a much stronger surface low coming through. And you can see a 983 millibar low moving to western Kansas. 986 millibar low moving up into Iowa Wednesday morning. And this is where our next chance for severe weather is going to be coming in. So, as we continue through Wednesday, and the low pressure system's not really going to strengthen or weaken. It's going to kind of stay around the same intensity, at least indicated by the European model. And obviously you can see here, so you get the peak time heating, Wednesday, late Wednesday afternoon into the early evening. Here we go. We got more strong severe storms out there from the Ohio Valley down into the Mid-South region out there. And that risk could continue into Wednesday night out there. So we got a much stronger surface low coming up for Wednesday. So with a stronger surface low, the wind energy is likely going to be stronger compared to Wednesday. So if we look at the 500 millibar winds here, this is actually the 60 euro. So this is the newer euro model run, but it's pretty close to the 0Z run. So we'll just look into the latest run of the euro for this one. You can see here we got a pretty good jet streak moving from northeastern Kansas or northern Missouri into southeastern Iowa, and eventually moving up into southern Wisconsin into northern Illinois. But really the main area of focus for thunderstorms will be in this area in here. This will be the area that will be favorable for some big time thunderstorms to develop. And you can see it covers a pretty large area, really. And this warm sector is going to be massive as well. If I go the United States view, you can see how huge this trough is. This trough extends all the way back into the desert Southwest, northern Mexico, into the Pacific. This is a huge trough out here. And it's also a positively tilted trough as well. Which, in the past, with positively tilted troughs in Kentucky, we've seen significant severe weather. And usually some of our bigger significant severe weather events have occurred in positively tilted trough type of setups out there. We also got a ridge of high pressure in the Atlantic out there, so that's going to keep moisture advancing northward into the Ohio Valley, so we'll have dew points in the 60s out here. And if I kind of go back a little bit here, there is, I don't know what I was going to say there, but then again, you can see here how big this trough is out there, and you can see how it really extends way back here. And this is probably going to be, and this is a type of look where you're going to have more storm systems going to ride up along this massive trough out here. So this is going to lead to a very active pattern. Plus, you got this ridge of high pressure out here. So it's going to keep the storm track generally going over some of the same areas for a multi-day period out there. But let's go back into Kentucky here, have a closer view here. So with these ripples in the 500 millibar winds, there's going to be some bigger thunderstorms in there out there. So we got plenty of lift and plenty of wind energy to work with. If we go to 850 millibar winds, the Lova Jet region, for Sunday storm, you were looking at winds, 40 to 50 knots generally. For this one here, it's anywhere from about 55 to upwards of 70 knots. So stronger wind shear is likely to be showing up for Wednesday's system. And if we look at dew points, you can see there dew points do get into low to mid 60s, and even the possibility for upper 60s out there. That's a dew point of 67 near Bowling Green. So there could be more moisture with this system as well. So it's definitely not a good thing. And if we look at temperatures here, you can see winds are out of the basically due south here across the eastern chunk of Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is kind of out of the southwest. But you look and see how warm these temperatures are. You can see temperatures are deep in the 70s, mid to upper 70s with even some low 80s out there. It's even showing 85 degrees near Murray, Kentucky. So that's going to tell you that there's going to be a lot of storm fuel for Wednesday's system here. And if you look at most unstable Cape here, yeah, you can see here plenty of storm fuel out there, anywhere from 1,000 to upwards of 2,500 joules per kilogram of Cape. So we got the wind energy, we got the instability, we got the moisture, we got the lift. So most of the ingredients look to be in place for a big severe weather event for Wednesday here. And after Sunday, we'll get into more detail with Wednesday here. There's some uncertainty in terms of MISCA details as usual for this range here, but the ceiling is higher for Wednesday than it is for Sunday. So I do have some concerns here. And going back to this view here, you're going to notice here when Wednesday system passes through, the cold front itself doesn't quite make it through Kentucky. It kind of sticks around off to our northwest. And this is going to be the beginning of a hyperactive pattern. And we're just going to continue to get these multiple waves of showers and storms kind of going over some of the same areas. And that may go into next weekend. And you might be thinking, there could be a lot of rain coming. And you're right. There's going to be a lot of rain coming. This is the Weather Prediction Center outlook for the next 7 days for rainfall. And you can see these are some pretty high numbers, and this is quite concerning. Anywhere from 4 to 8 inches of rain across a large chunk of Kentucky, with the highest amounts going across western parts of the state and even going up towards Cincinnati up along the Ohio River. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of rain coming, and this is going to lead to concerns for flooding. So, and especially for those rivers and creeks and streams. Now, the good news is this is all not going to be falling on the same day, but it's going to be happening over time. So those rivers and creeks and streams are going to be running quite high later this week, and especially into next weekend. And here's a European ensembles mean for rainfall. And you can see your numbers get higher a little bit farther off to the southwest, potentially nearing 9 inches of rain for the next 7 days. And if I wanted, and this is actually for the next 10 days, not 7, but either way though, we got a lot of rain coming later next week, which will lead to an increased threat for flooding, especially for river flooding as well. And we'll have more updates on all this stuff here tomorrow, especially for Sunday. I'll try to get a video out Sunday morning. But anyways, guys, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you really like my channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. If you guys got any questions, put the comment section down below. I answer you guys questions. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye and have a good day.